Surrender versus Tyler, coming right up for the second time today out of 3 matches. This is just a lot of Surrender and Tyler we've got cooking on today. It's going to be a Rogue Mirror once again, same decks. Everything's the same as the previous, or first match of the day, should I say, except that the loser of this is done for the season. They are out.
That is correct. It all comes down to this for both of these players, what they've all been fighting for throughout Grandmasters. And, you know, as I've said, it kind of feels like Grandmasters is as good as it gets already, because it's playing week after week against the best players in the world at the absolute peak of competitive Hearthstone for this year. But it gets even better, qualifying through to the global finals later on this year to become our Hearthstone world champion would be a feat that all of these players would aspire to.
Yeah, and also, you know, we can take a look at the deck list as well. We'll get them chucked up whenever. It's Rogue, we've seen it.
It's chucked up.
Yeah, nice, good job. But for me, in terms of Grandmaster, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because all these players, just for this season, are auto through to Season 2.
Yes.
So next season, these players are back. They do more or less the same thing again in terms of, yes, it's multiple weeks of competition, and so on, to get another spot into global finals, to get 2 from each region.
Yeah.
But if you can do it first time, well, second time, I believe there are relegations on the line.
Yeah.
So, if you can do it first time, you get a little bit more relaxed for Season 2, and then you can just, you know, work on getting wins. Because, most importantly as well, these players are not only playing for a spot in the global finals, which is, of course, priority number 1, but when they play week in, week out, they earn prize money for winning matches of Hearthstone every week. So there is still plenty of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Incentive.
Perfect. For playing every single week and performing as well as possible. So even if the players that get a spot this weekend will mean that, well, next season they just do everything they can to try and get wins, as opposed to, you know, maybe they can play a little bit more risky to try and get some more wins, as opposed to saying, what's the safest thing to just give myself, you know, a reasonable outcome. They can just keep focusing for Season 2 and then really work on getting ready for those global finals. But that is another story for another time. For now, we've got Tyler versus Surrender for the second time today. Last match of the day, Rogue Mirror.
And this really has been, when you factor in the last series as well, a tale of 2 Edwins for these players. I think we've seen Edwin on the coin like pretty much every time. It truly
is true,
was.
actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it every time?
It truly is the best of cards, and my God, is it the worst of cards.
I do appreciate, and I'm sure you will too, as a reasonable level memer, the
Apprentice.
the Van Cleef dodging nerfs and rotations and images I've seen are pretty funny.
There are some very good
They've cracked me up a little bit until I go on ladder and get destroyed by like a turn 2 or turn 3 Van Cleef. Yeah. And then I'm like, yeah, maybe something needs to happen here.
That classic Neville's picture. Dodged another one. Lol.
I miss Neville's.
Yeah. At the same time, I think I'm a little bit too old for him now. I don't think I could handle it.
It was definitely the earlier part of Hearthstone streams. My Hearthstone stream life cycle.
Formative years.
And we are where we are because of Neville's.
Interestingly enough now, for Surrender, he has the ability to go for the exact same curve he went for in Game 1 of the first series of the day. Coin Miscreant, Snip Snap, Shark, Double Lackey, Edwin. He did not win that game when he went for it last time. I will be super curious to see if anything changes for him this time, because I don't think there's anything different between these 2 games so far. Tyler's had the same turn, I think, unless I'm remembering correctly.
So what would you like Surrender to do?
I think I'd like it to still see Coin Miscreant. The pickup of Shadow Step does actually change things a little bit. But yeah, I think that this from Surrender, you know, it shows belief in his own gameplay, right? Because he's going for the play that he believes to be the best one, and he will not be shaken by
it not working.
It not working the first time. Exactly. It's on average the best thing he can do. And you know, the Shadow Step does shake things up as well, because it means, you know, we could see next turn Step the Miscreant and then just an Edwin, although that doesn't seem particularly powerful.
What about a Snip Snap this turn? And then
it's the exact same as the first time around.
Because then suddenly, though, with the Shadow Step, there can be Witchy Lackey, Shadow Step, Witchy Lackey into Van Cleef. which I think would make a pretty reasonable sized board.
This is like an endgame where we get to see the same situation play out again from a different perspective.
Haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, you haven't seen Endgame.
Thanks for.
Oh, sorry.
Hashtag spoiler alert.
Outing you.
Apologies. Should I make a tweet now? In half an hour's time, Derek will spoil a part of Endgame. Do not watch. This Twitch chat comes up.
I'm allowed to as well.
I mean,
that was the lightest of spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, you don't care.
Well, it kind of spoils itself though, because doesn't Strange allude to that anyway?
Well,
he sits there and sees like tons of outcomes. But
he doesn't allude that they're going to go back in time.
See, I didn't know that either. Now you've made it worse.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just not going to bother watching it now.
It's not
Derek,
my fault.
Continue with
How
that story.
How can you not have seen it by now? Sorry.
I've been busy. Right?
Yes, and so also similarly to Endgame, Thanos gets killed by a herd of rhino. That also definitely happens, and I'm throwing around smoke so that you'll know.
I've really been sold on this rhino. Now though, Tyler's just in that rough spot in this matchup where you feel like no matter what you do, you're behind. And you're probably going to stay behind. I would like the double Lackey play, the Lackey Shadow Step play though.
Really?
You make a 5-drop, and you have a reasonably large Van Cleave.
It's true, it's pretty good on this turn. So what's the difference of... you can't clear off the Hench Clan
Go face.
Burglar though then, which is not a huge deal to be fair. But if we were to see... Like, it's the same situation, right? If we were to see Shark this turn, it's still a very powerful turn next turn with double Lackey, probably with a step thrown in there as well. But what it also means is that if the Edwin comes down and they don't have sap, you win on the spot.
Right.
Whether or not that's worth it.
Wow, Vendetta coming out. I didn't really see that one coming. I feel like for me, because of the... I don't know. Because Tyler's plays quite slow, I feel like you should take advantage of that and not play a turn that's as slow as Shark. So I don't mind this Vendetta. I would put this Vendetta number 2, Shark number 3, and my play number 1 because I said it. But yeah, I feel like there was a chance to get a big Van Cleef, a 5-drop, and the Snip Snap on the board versus 1-4-3. You're not as weak to sap, probably based on what the 5-drop would be, I guess.
Yeah.
And you can keep cooking afterwards because you still have another Witchy Lackey, you still have stuff for Togwaggle later on, and you still have a Shark for the Shark into Witchy Lackey potentially the turn after. But anyway, it's not what Surrender did. We can't endgame it and go back in time, spell number 3. And Tyler is going to continue fighting back and evening up the board to some extent.
So many options available now to Surrender. He's seeing
the lines.
14 million and 6 different outcomes available here. And only one wins him the game.
Surrender Strange.
I wonder.
Either way, I think it's hard not to Shadow Step a Lackey and keep hold of it this turn. Are you with me?
I see your
It just
point.
feels so good to be able to just like... The Lackey Evolve is probably just going to be fine this turn. With the way the board, you can get a trade with the Miscreant, evolve it. And then you just have High Sparrow, Togwaggle and a Lackey next turn. It just feels good.
Right, so what Surrender's going for here, it looks like with the Spirit of the Shark, is you take the value trade, obviously, with the Miscreant. You evolve it with the Witchy Lackey, and then probably step it again to set up for a double treasure on High Sparrow next turn.
Get behind that.
In the end, he decides High Sparrow next turn is not the most powerful thing he can do.
The Brotherhood shall prevail.
Okay.
This is so interesting, man. There's so many different ways this could be taken.
So to me, this looks like a turn he could have done a turn earlier. This is roughly what his board would have looked like if he made the turn on the previous one, right?
It would have been a smaller Edwin, right?
Only by 1, though.
And there would have still been a 4-3 in play on the other side.
So many.
Because he wouldn't have played the Vendetta, so there still would have been a Hench
There
Clan Burglar.
would, but you would have had a 5-drop, not a 4-drop.
Yes.
If you replayed the Lackey.
That's fair, yeah.
So it's just interesting, right? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah.
I just think it's very interesting.
The thing is, an average 5-drop, I think, will probably trade against a Hench Clan Burglar and a Dagger, right? Which is puts you in a much worse position than would have happened here. Obviously, you get it a turn earlier, which, of course, is going to be weaker. It's less mana that you're spending on it.
Yeah, just very interesting. I think
Very
like
interesting.
the routes both players have had here. I think Tyler's had a bit more of a simpler game because he's on the back foot and he just has to do the stuff to try and not make him fall too far behind. But Surrender's had so many choices.
Yeah, and I think from Surrender, the cornerstone of his thinking here is whether or not he wants to set up for Heist Baron Togwaggle next turn. And I think not setting up for a 0-mana Lackey into Togwaggle on turn 6 is probably correct, actually. Having looked at it, I like it a bit more because the board's too tumultuous at the moment. There's so much stuff flying around. Tyler's going wide on the board. You're trying to go wide on the board. And I think setting up for a later Togwaggle after you've the dust has settled a little bit to refill that value is very valid.
Also as well, Togwaggle from 9 onwards is great if you have the 0-mana Lackey or Lackey on the board because Wand is playable right there, right then.
Yeah.
So you can have a slow tempo play, which is the Togwaggle, 6 mana 5/5, and then the Recovery, which is 3 cards that cost 0 mana from you.